Hello, my name is Dr. Seth Brown, a lecturer in the School of Education and a program leader at Unesco UNEVOC at RMIT University. I would like to start by acknowledging the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations, on whose unceded lands we conduct today's meeting. I respectfully acknowledge their ancestors and elders, past and present. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians and their ancestors of the lands and waters across Australia where we conduct this meeting. In this presentation, I will introduce you to UNEVOC at RMIT by providing information about who we are, what we do, our approach, our frameworks, our initiatives, and our networks. UNEVOC at RMIT is part of an inclusive global learning network called the UNEVOC Network. It is a leader in facilitating co-design approaches for creating a future of sustainable development for all young people in times of crisis and disruption. The UNEVOC network is coordinated by Unesco UNEVOC. Unesco UNEVOC is UNESCO's specialized center for technical and vocational education and training. It also assists UNESCO's 195 member states to strengthen and upgrade their TVET systems. More information about Unesco UNEVOC can be found at the following site. We partner with government, industry, and the nonprofit sectors to lead applied and research-based activities that are fundamentally framed by the agenda set by the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Announced by the UN General Assembly in 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals are a set of 17 goals and 169 targets that are intended to provide a roadmap for global action across the 15 years to 2030. SDGs 4, 5, and 8 are particularly relevant to the work that we do. Goal 4, Quality Education for All, ensures inclusive and equitable quality education and promotes lifelong learning opportunities for all. Goal 5, Gender Equality, achieves gender equality and empowers all women and girls. Goal 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, promotes sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. The SDGs promote a transformative vision of a world free of poverty, violence, disease, and want, a world where all life can thrive. However, in devising the SDGs, the UN General Assembly noted that there are immense challenges to sustainable development. While poverty, gender, and economic inequality, unemployment, and humanitarian crisis continue to limit the prospects for sustainable and inclusive development, the UN General Assembly suggests that climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our time, and its adverse impacts undermine the ability of all countries to achieve sustainable development. The survival of many societies and of the biological support systems of the planet is at risk. With these challenges in mind, and with a sense that business as usual is not an option in times of crisis and disruption, our work is focused on an applied program of research in the following areas. Number 1, young people's 21st century capabilities and transitions in the future of work. This connects with the work that we are conducting elsewhere and investigating art-based social enterprises and marginalized young people's transitions. 2, building a networked approach to enabling and capturing social value in learning and training. 3, exploring educational ecologies of well-being, resilience, and enterprise. This connects with the work that we were doing elsewhere in exploring critical understandings of young people's well-being, resilience, and enterprise in the Anthropocene. In pursuing approaches to building sustainable futures for young people, we draw on the principles of ethical innovation. Across much of the world today, innovation is increasingly recognized as a key driver of economic growth and social progress. However, not all innovation is underpinned by an ethical commitment to sustainability, equity, and inclusion, and to address pressing social and environmental problems. Lauren Rickards and Wendy Steele, researchers at the Center for Urban Research at RMIT University, suggest that ethical innovation has 4 core principles. Ethical innovation is 1, responsible, so anticipatory and precautionary; 2, inclusive, so collaborative and systemic; 3, disruptive, bold and impactful; and 4, engaged, democratic, and purposeful. International agencies such as UNICEF and the European Union have advocated for approaches to research and innovation that are underpinned by high ethical standards, are collaborative, and are oriented towards goals of community development and social need. In our work with a range of stakeholders, we utilize co-design approaches. Co-design is an approach to the development of programs, projects, or services that actively involves all stakeholders in the design process. When stakeholders and end users are included as equal partners in the design process, the outcomes and products of that design process are more likely to generate real social impact and to be tailored to end users' needs. The New South Wales Council of Social Services suggests that for co-design to be effective, it needs to be, one, inclusive, so co-design works in partnership with the users or consumers of the program, product, or service. It solicits and utilizes the ideas, advice, and decisions of critical stakeholders, people with relevant lived or worked experience, and the knowledge, experience, and skills of experts in the field. Two, it's respectful, so efforts are made to engage all design partners on equal terms and to see their input as part of a democratic process. So all participants are seen as experts and their input is valid and has equal standing. Three, participative. So consultation is one part of co-design, and rather than simply ticking the box of consultation at the beginning of the design process, continued engagement with stakeholders occurs throughout the co-design process. Co-design uses a series of conversations and activities where dialogue, engagement, generate new shared meanings based on expert knowledge and lived experience. And four, iterative, ideas, solutions are continually tested and evaluated with the participants. Changes and adaptations are a natural part of the process, trialing possibilities and insights as they emerge, taking risks and allowing for failure. And five, outcomes focused. The process can be used to create, redesign, or evaluate services, systems, or products. It is designed to achieve an outcome or series of outcomes where the potential solutions can be rapidly tested, effectiveness measured, and where the spreading or scaling of these solutions can be developed with stakeholders and in context. Our work is guided by the Unesco Strategy for Technical and Vocational Education and Training. This strategy intended to align with SDG 4 to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. It aims to support the efforts of member states to enhance the relevance of their TVET systems and to equip all young people and adults with the skills required for employment, decent work, entrepreneurship, and lifelong learning, and to contribute to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development as a whole. The strategy has three priority areas: one, fostering youth employment and entrepreneurship; two, promoting equity and gender equality; and three, facilitating the transition to green economies and sustainable societies. So under fostering youth employment and entrepreneurship, we see rising youth unemployment as one of the most significant problems facing economies and societies in today's world, for developed and developing countries alike. Globally, 1.44 billion workers are in precarious and vulnerable forms of employment. Over the next decade, 475 million new jobs need to be created to absorb the 75 million youth currently unemployed and the 40 million new annual entrants to the labor market. The TVET strategy aims to support the development of youth employment and entrepreneurship through three key activities: supporting member states to conduct policy reviews and TVET reforms, mobilizing cooperation of different stakeholders in the TVET network, and supporting member states to design efficient and effective TVET funding strategies. Under promoting equity and gender equality, we see that despite technological progress and economic growth, inequalities and poverty persist in many parts of the world. On average, for countries in which data is available, the wealthiest 10% earn 30 to 40% of the country's total income. By contrast, the poorest 10% earn around 2% of the total income. In addition, there are gendered inequalities in the labor force participation. Women are more likely to be unemployed, and they are often concentrated in precarious forms of employment. UNESCO's efforts to address these issues focus on promoting targeted policy measures for disadvantaged groups and enhancing women's and girls' access to relevant TVET programs and providing equal opportunities in the world of work. Under facilitating the transition to green economies and sustainable societies, we see that global climate change represents an imminent and potentially irreversible threat to the planet's life support systems. However, it's estimated that as many as 15 to 60 million new jobs could be generated over the next 2 decades. In the transition to a greener and more sustainable economy and society, Activities in this priority area will focus on promoting green skills for the smooth transition to green economies, fostering cross-sectoral approaches of TVET, and closing the digital divide and reducing inequalities of access to digital technologies so that all member states are able to take advantage of sustainable development. There's an increasing focus in policy, education, and community discussions on the apparent skills and capabilities that young people will need to develop and demonstrate in order to thrive in the complex, changing, precarious, and uncertain labor markets of the 21st century. In its 2018 report, The Future of Education and Skills, Education 2030, the OECD argues that education needs to aim to do more than prepare young people for the world of work. It needs to equip students with the skills they need to become active, responsible, and engaged citizens. In the context of the unprecedented social, economic, and environmental challenges and changes of the 21st century, schools must be able to prepare young people for jobs that have not been created yet, for technologies that have not yet been invented, to solve problems that have not yet been anticipated. The OECD argues that curiosity, imagination, resilience, and self-regulation are the qualities that young people will need to develop to successfully navigate these uncertain futures. The World Economic Forum offers a similar assessment, suggesting that complex problem-solving, critical thinking, and creativity are becoming the most significant and in-demand skills and capabilities in the context of an impending fourth industrial revolution, in which developments in genetics, artificial intelligence, robotics, nanotechnology, 3D printing, and biotechnology, to name just a few, are all building on and amplifying one another. In Australia, the Melbourne-based youth advocacy organization, the Foundation for Young Australians, has attempted to put the concept of enterprise skills at the forefront of the education and training policy agenda. The FYA suggests that the new work order that current generations of young people confront are being shaped by three fundamental forces: automation, globalization, and collaboration. Whether they're termed 21st century skills, enterprise skills, or generic or soft skills, what all these skills discourses seek to do is to advocate for young people to develop in-demand and transferable skills and capabilities, such as problem solving, communication skills, and critical thinking, and to pursue careers in areas of the labor market that are considered least vulnerable to the effects of technological change. The demand that young people develop 21st century skills has emerged in a context in which multiple Earth systems, oceanic, atmospheric, terran, and capitalist, are in deep crisis. In the 21st century, automation, algorithms, big data, and artificial intelligence are becoming increasingly significant as drivers of economic growth and of processes of social, cultural, political, and governmental change more generally. And as these processes advance, they threaten to make precarious and risky labor markets even more precarious and risky through increasing casualization and technological unemployment. The OECD's 2019 employment outlook estimates that across its 34 member countries, 14% of existing jobs could disappear over the next 15 to 20 years, and 32% are likely to change radically. The report also notes that Australia's rate of casualization is currently one of the highest in the OECD. Even as Australia was sheltered from some of the worst impacts of the global financial crisis, the economic conditions which have prevailed in the post-GFC period have had particularly harsh impacts on young people in this country. Australia has witnessed one of the largest increases in underemployment across OECD countries since 2007, with the OECD Employment Outlook observing that young people with medium and high-level education have seen increases in the probability of low-paid employment in Australia since 2006. But the challenges pale in comparison to the planetary crisis looming on the horizon. If anthropogenic climate change is not averted, then it appears increasingly likely that processes of dispossession, displacement, and extinction on a massive scale of humans and non-human species alike will prove catastrophic for the future of the planet. In October 2018, the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released a special report on the impacts of global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and related global greenhouse gas emission pathways. The report warned that major global action on curbing greenhouse gas emissions would be necessary within the next 12 years, that is before 2030, if the most severe consequences of global warming are to be avoided. However, massive biodiversity loss, desertification, and sea level rises, among other processes, are already underway, and these climate change impacts ensure that future generations will inhabit a planet that is very different to the one that current and previous generations have known. Young people's creativity, critical thinking, and other key 21st century skills and capabilities are increasingly framed as the solution to the various emerging crises and disruptions of capitalism and the environment. Through developing and exercising these key forms of human capital, it is thought that young people can equip themselves with a degree of insurance against unemployment and underemployment, allowing them to navigate future working lives that it is claimed will be characterized by almost constant churn and change. However, it is important to recognize that engagement and well-being most often come before skills and transitions, and this is particularly the case for young people from disadvantaged and marginalized backgrounds. It is for this reason that we utilize an ecological understanding of young people's skills and transitions, an understanding that is illustrated in the figure below. This figure is modeled on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy recognizes that before individuals can achieve self-actualization, they must satisfy more fundamental needs through securing the conditions that support normal physiological functioning, personal security, and healthy relationships. We support the use of sociological models of student engagement that recognize the ability of young people to engage meaningfully in education and training and to develop 21st century skills and capabilities is influenced by a range of contextual factors beyond the control of many individuals. These contextual factors include the peer, family, and community relationships in which the young person is embedded, as well as the broader social, political, and environmental context shaping young people's capacities for well-being, resilience, and enterprise. The work that we do engages with emerging ways of thinking about and responding to social issues and shared value. The concept of shared value recognizes that traditionally corporations have excluded consideration of social and environmental issues from their economic thinking. Preoccupied with the goal of profit maximization and accountable primarily to their shareholders, firms adopting this narrow focus have often failed to adequately take into account the needs of the wider communities and ecosystems in which the corporation is embedded. The benefit of a shared value approach is that productivity, competitive advantage, and economic growth can be enhanced while simultaneously generating positive social and environmental impact. While the creating shared value approach originated in the business world, it was first elaborated in some detail by Michael Porter and Mark Kramer in the Harvard Business Review. A range of nonprofit organizations are realizing the benefits of a shared value approach through adopting and pioneering shared value approaches in partnership with the corporate sector. Nonprofit and community sector organizations are able to leverage their expertise and resources of business in the effort to address pressing social problems. In this way, shared value approaches can play a key role in promoting ethical innovation and sustainable development. I'd like to share with you a couple of our initiatives. The first is the Young People Sustainable Futures Lab. It's a collaborative research lab for co-designing shared value for a future of sustainable development for all young people in times of crisis and disruption. Place-based ethical innovation, reference to a global framework for transformation, including diverse stakeholders initially across Melbourne's north, structured through concept notes, working papers, collective activities, and collaborative funding opportunities. The second initiative is the Colab Sdgs, which brings together different stakeholders involved with education and industry to reflect and exchange knowledge on how to incorporate the UN Sustainable Development Goals into practice. This exchange of ideas involves forms of critique, inquiry, and investigation into the assumptions that underpin the SDGs, the challenges of data gathering and determining SDG achievement, and the divide between policy and practice. We partner within and beyond the RMIT research system with the following internal and external partners and collaborators.